So this is a quick tutorial for that was requested by a former student. So they have a character that they need to be able to constrain body parts to each other. So for example, a dance where they're holding hands, but then later that hand goes to the other character's shoulder, and so this is really just like any other constraint um, problem. And so let's one of the things that we need to consider is sort of the difference between FK and IK. So we have um, IK is going to keep a character's hand locked in a certain location, right? And that is going to mean that if we want one character to sort of lead this animation, let's say it's a dance, then we have to decide which is the driving character and which is the character that is going to be led, right? So I'm going to make our character on the left here the driving character, the character on the right sort of the one that's following. And so that means I'm going to go ahead and put this character's arm in IK, right? And that means wherever this end effector goes, right, it will go with it. So we could do sort of the simplest version of this, which is to grab this control, and then just set this up as a simple parent constraint. But this is not the best way of going about that, and I'll show you why. If I go to constrain and parent, so now anywhere that this hand goes, the other hand will follow, right? The problem with that is now the translates and rotates are not editable because they're being driven by that constraint, right? And so if I need my character to reposition their hand on the other character's hand, then when we move, it's just going to snap back, right? Because, and if I tried to hit S to set a keyframe, now I've broken the constraint. And it's because I'm giving my conflicting commands here. I'm telling it first to have a constraint to control the translates and rotates. And then I'm giving it another command that says, no, have a keyframe control the translate and rotates. And so that's why Maya generates this blend parent node here. But again, this is just not the right way of doing it because really I don't want it to be either or. I want it to be both, right? So let's undo a few steps here until we get back before we put that constraint on. So over there, no, a little bit more. There we go. So no more constraint. So most rigs are set up with this understanding that you may sometime need something else to drive this. So let's see if this rig is. I'm just going to hold shift and hit the plus sign there. And since I have the IK control selected, if I hit F, it will focus in on it. And you'll see that right there's our, and you'll see that right there is our IK control. And then right above it is an extra node. And if I rotate that, it's also going to control the hand. So this is just a group parent node, and you'll see it's even labeled as extra arm R. In fact, if we go to the one above it, that's another one. It just already has something constrained to it, right? So this is this means that I could have that be what is being controlled, right? So I could grab this hand and this arm and say constrain parent, right? And so now I get this control, right? But I still have the translates and rotates free that I could move this around and reposition it. Right? I can still get the character sort of into a position to actually be holding hands with this character, and then we get those hands sort of locked together a little better, right? So again, still has a couple of issues though. So let me show you a slightly cleaner way of doing this. And I guess cleaner isn't the right way. It's more of a visual way of doing this, right? Because I can have multiple things control this hand, right? I could do that. We could go constrain parent, and then I could grab the shoulder and I could say constrain parent. Right? And so now both of them are controlling that hand just a little bit. Right? And we're getting some conflicting signals, and we're seeing that both of them are controlling it equally, because if I go to that group, oh, I'm sorry, I did that on the wrong thing, didn't I? Let's see, I go to this constrain parent, and then this No. Sorry. This constraint parent. What? Yeah, node array contains a target. Oh. Not constraint parent. And so now I have two different things that are controlling it, right? I have the clavicle and the hand controlling it. And I could go in here on this object and I could blend in between one or the other. I could totally blend out of the hand controlling it, and now it's just the clavicle that has some sort of control on it, right? And then we got this displacement on it, so if the hand were over here on the character's shoulder, I'll rotate that to where that makes more sense. Now when I animate that clavicle, my character's hand will sort of stay locked to that shoulder. And then if I wanted to blend back, I could go back to that parent node. I could blend out of the clavicle and into the hand. And now it's the hand that's controlling it. So here you can see kind of the issue is that my hand is displaced, right? And I kind of need that ability to lock my hand to a location, right? I mean, I could manually animate it over time and make that transition happen when I'm picking it up from one to the other. But the method I like to use is a socket system. And so I'll show you, more than anything, this just gives us that. Go ahead and delete this constraint that is on here. It'll be right here. What the socket system does is it gives us some options on how this is visible to us, right? That seems incorrect. There. Oh, that has numbers on it again too. There we go. So what I really want to do is get a socket system so I can see what is aligning to what, right? So let's do that really quick. I'm going to do that with locators. I'm going to say create locator. Let's say it creates one over here, and I'm just going to make several of these. Control D. I'm going to name them really quickly. We'll call this one world socket. And this one is, let's call this shoulder socket. And then this one can be, I guess it's left hand socket. Right. And then we could make one more here, and we're going to call it IK hand parent. Right. Now this system works in the same for driving systems like this, or if you're wanting to do some sort of prop situation where a character is putting a prop from one hand to the other hand or something like that. And really what we're getting is these visual representations of what is locking to what, right? So what I will do with this is I will use this socket, and I'm just going to align it to this wrist here. This is the hand parent. And I will say, let's do modify match translation or transformations, and I'll open this up. So I'll match the translation and the rotation of it so that they are the same. I'm going to do the same with this hand. Let me go ahead and zero all this back out. This character back in sort of its default bind pose. We have some rotations on that as well. Right. So this is the left hand socket, so I'll do the same thing there. I'm just going to align them. I'm not doing any what's happening there? Match translation. Oh, do I have to do it the other way? Yeah, there we go. Match translation, match rotation. Same with this. Oops. Match translation, match rotation. And so we get these sockets that show us sort of a representation of where that object is, right? And then finally, I will do this one, which is the world, and it can just be wherever we want it to. I usually leave it kind of at the origin, but we'll leave it there. So a couple of things you could do with these, like I kind of want to be able to zero those back out. So if we go down here and look at my sockets on this, right, there are just these 4 locators. I'm going to go ahead and try freezing transformations on that. Let's see what this does. Modify freeze transformations. So I guess that doesn't really work the way I would like it to. So let's just go ahead and undo that for right now. That's okay. And what I could do is I could group these to themselves, right? So let's copy this name, Control C, and then I'll do Control G to group it, and then I'll name that group. Right. Same here with this, Control C, Control G. What did I just do? No, that's not what I wanted. I think I hit D instead of, okay, Control G, and then I can paste that and add group to the end, and again I'll do it with this one as well. IK harem parent, Control G, and then we'll add group to the end. And so now what we have is each of these in their own group, right? And what I can do now is I can constrain this clavicle to the shoulder group. So I'll do a constrain parent. And then I'll do the same here with this hand. We'll do the left hand control to the left hand group, constrain parent. And the other way, I guess this one doesn't actually have to be in a group. We'll go ahead and take that one back out of that group just for clarity's sake. My bad on that one. Because this one is going to go the other way. Right? This one is not going to be parented. The hand is not going to be controlling the parent. The parent is going to be controlling the hand. Right? So whenever I move this locator, I want that to drive this right here, this extra node, right? So I'll do IK ham parent to that extra node, and I'll hit constrain parent. So what that means is if I grab this IK and move it around, my hand is going to go wherever I want it to, and I still have a little bit of control for my hand underneath it if I need to move that a little bit. Right? So this hand parent is now driving the IK hand, and that's just the only real reason to do that is so the IK hand has some freedom. We could have still done it on this node by itself, but then I wouldn't be able to see that group node. That group node is invisible, right? So this gives us a visible representation of what it is we're constraining. Right? So here comes the sort of the next part that is kind of important. So I am now going to constrain this locator to each of these sockets, right? So I'll show you how to do that. We select here. I'm going to select my IK parent, and I'm going to go to constrain parent, but I got to choose my options box. And under the options box, I'm going to uncheck that maintain offset. Okay. I'm going to hit add, and you'll see what happened is that IK node went down to the location of this, right? I'll do the same thing again. I'll go ahead and turn off the on that IK world parent. I'll go ahead and turn off that value to 0. I guess it doesn't really matter right now. So the next thing I'll do is I'll do that with the hand socket, right? This socket right here, left hand socket, I want to add a parent constraint to this. And again, we're going to go to constrain parent, choose this options box, make sure maintain offset is off, and just hit add. And so now you'll see it's like my IK hand is it's being partially controlled by this world, it's being partially controlled by this locator, and that locator is being controlled by this hand, right? And I'll do this one more time with my chest locator up here, or my, I guess it's my shoulder locator, right? To the IK hand parent, constrain parent. And so now 3 different things are controlling it, right? And here's kind of the cool part of this. Right? If I were to move my character over to here, right, just so we can see this, currently our IK hand parent is right there, right? You can see that control is all over the place, right? But this right here, this has these 3 weights, right? And whichever of these is set to 1 is where our IK hand is going to go. So if I took this and set that to 0 and set that to 0, it's going to go and line up exactly that locator and the left hand locator are in the exact same location. Right? Now what I see from that is that my left hand locator is all twisted weird, but if I wanted my character's hand to blend into this pose, I just need to change my left hand locator orientation. Right? Let's just go ahead and get it down here. I guess I need to get these characters closer so we can see this better. Right? And let's go ahead and curl up this hand just so we can. I'm just trying to get it to where the IK is not locking as much. There we go. Right. So my left hand locator, I'll sort of put this together as if they're holding hands. Right. And so now that is where that's at. And my shoulder locator, I can move it around too, and I can put it, say, over here. Right. And if I go back to my IK hand parent here and blend out of that left hand and into that shoulder, this hand will go up to the shoulder. So of course I would want to sort of reorient this shoulder so the hand that's where we want it to be. Right? We'll say something like this. But now that means I just have to change that one value that is on this IK hand parent here. Set to 1, not 3. To change between whether this is on our character's hand or our character's shoulder, or I could also add this just up here somewhere in world space, right? Up here, like our character is not holding on to this character at all. So you'll see right now, if this moves, he goes with it. Right? And if we were to blend if he moves, it goes with it, right? But let's say I didn't want his hand going with it at all, right? Like I wanted him to be able to walk away. I could then blend this to the world space. It goes up there to that one. Of course, that's all confusing. There we go. And now, I can move this character all the way away. It doesn't matter. It's not controlling that hand anymore, right? So I get this option to sort of blend between the different spaces, right? And so this is a space switching tool. Which space is controlling our character's IK hand? Now this works very much like if I wanted my character to be holding a gun, right, in their left hand, and then the right hand is sort of holding on to like the barrel or something like that, and then I wanted them to release that barrel and be able to move their hand freely. Like I could use a similar system for this. Now the hard part about this is like you still have to do some digging in the rigging while you're animating, right? Like, to make this even work, you have to at least get down here to this IK parent constraint, and that's a little bit of a pain in the butt to me. And really, like, what I usually like to do is I like to try to hide that stuff. So you could go to like this control and say modify, and then we'll just add an attribute, and I'll just name these attributes. Let's say world space. And this would probably be easier if it was 0 to 1 here, so we'll say 0 tab 1 add, and then I'll say L hand space 0 and 1 add, and then I will say shoulder space 0 and 1. Okay, so now I have on the hand control itself, the thing that I am going to be animating, right? On the hand control itself, I have all of these different spaces, right? And what I can do then is go to my connection editor, general editor, connection editor, and load in. I mean, it automatically loads in what I had selected, which is my hand. If it doesn't, you can hit reload left. And then I can load this parent constraint, reload right, and you'll see at the bottom down there, there's those weights for that parent constraint. So then I can just click these together, world space to world space, left hand space to socket, shoulder to shoulder, right? And hit close. And now what I have is on my character's hand control, on this control right here, I have the ability to choose one of them. And I can go to world space, or I can go to left hand space, or I can go to shoulder space. All right. And then I can key that on and off as I animate. So the other cool thing about this is even if I'm in left hand space, I can still set keyframes on this, right? Like if I want him to reposition his hand, I can set keyframes on this character's hand and move it around, and it's still in that same space. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Really, you just create a locator socket for any space that you need your character to switch to. Some rigs will already have some of this set up on the IK. This one I don't think really does. Yeah, it's got this follow chest option, which is kind of a chest space, which means like as I move around, it's following the chest, versus if I turn that off, as I move around, it doesn't follow the chest. And that's kind of a similar option. Some rigs will have it built in to where you can have your character put their hand on their hip or on their head, and then those objects will control it. But this would be the same situation if you wanted this character to put his hand on his head, like he's like thinking, right? And then you want the character's head to be able to drive that hand moving around, right? It's a lot of complicated setup, and I have to admit that this is one of sort of the it's one of the things that is very standard that everybody needs to do, that Maya has not came up with a particularly good solution that is easy, right? Like it almost always requires some sort of rigging to make this happen. So I know it's a little bit complicated, but hopefully this video helps at least clarify what is happening in this socket system that I usually generate in order to work with this system. Now, the other thing I will say that is kind of nice, right, is really I always wait until the very end to make those transitions make sense, right? Like, I just think that constraints are always going to look broken until closer to the end, and I just accept that while I'm animating. And then at the end, you can sort of go in and polish those transitions and make sure you're getting your arcs and everything easing in and out nice and smoothly. But one of the other things you can do, and this is, I'll extend this just a little bit to show you, right, is let's say I have some animation on this shoulder. Let's say we got from there to here, right, and then back to here, right? So we get this like this hand swinging. They're holding hands, right? And then I want my my character somewhere in the middle of this to release the shoulder, and I'm going to go ahead and give this character some upper body animation too, just to complicate it a little bit. To release the hand and move up to the character's shoulder. Ooh. And put his hand on the shoulder, right? And maybe he's like turning to him to look at him or something. Let's continue to put more animation on there just to make it complicated. So we have all that going on, right? And let's say like right through here, I'm going to set a keyframe that says, sorry, is this the right hand? Yeah, correct hand. So we got a keyframe there. So let's say right about here, I'm like, you know what? I want to start transitioning up to the shoulder. This is going to be a messy transition. So I'll go ahead and hit S here. I will blend out of that and up to the shoulder. And so now we'll see that that happens. One of the things we can do to try to fix some of that is maybe this shoulder socket is actually rotated around that way wrong. Or not, maybe not wrong, but like awkwardly. Right, let's see if that transition happens a little better now. There we go. Puts it up there on the shoulder. Right? He's doing all of that. And so let's say I've done all my animation and everything is absolutely perfect now. Let's go ahead and make this look a little bit more perfect before I say that. Look at that. Perfect animation, right? Switches up, puts his hand on his shoulder, right? And like really, I'm just like, this is just a lot of, you know, like I've done all my splining, I've done all my cleanup and everything. One of the things I can do, like to not have to worry about how I'm switching, or like I just want to be able to control certain parts of the animation, is I can then go into that control on that hand, right? And go to Edit, Keys, and Bake the Simulation. And choose my options box and just make sure everything is set to default, and hit Bake. And look what I get here. I get a keyframe on that control for every frame of this object's location. Now this is still being controlled though, right? Like if I look at this, it's still controlling it, right? But what I very well could do is just delete all of this rigging I just did. I just delete everything there. And just say it's gone now, right? Oh, wait, what just happened? That not work. I did bake those keys. Oh, okay. Actually, for that to work, I would have to bake this control. So let's undo that back to where the constraints were working. So I could bake the keys onto this control. So I edit, keys, bake simulation. Right? And so now that, because I wasn't actually moving this control at all, right? I'm going to go ahead and delete that again. And so now I have, you know, the keyframes on this parent node, right? And then I could just delete the constraint that is driving all of that, which is right there. And I could even delete all of this rigging that we've used to make all of this. But that parent node on that IK, right, still has the keyframes for all of this, right? And so if I'm like, you know, but like right through here, this transition doesn't look right. What I could do is like, right, I could keep that maybe, but I could go in here and delete some of these keyframes, and I could make this transition look a little better just by manually editing some key poses out here in the world. Right? And so now my character releases that hand, and maybe like right up here, I'll still take it out and kind of go a little wider here with it, and then maybe something like this. Right? There we go. So I mean, this is very sloppy, but you get the idea of what I'm going for. Now this is something I would only really do at the very end, and that is because if I were to now change this animation, it's not driving it anymore, right? So I just kind of broke that constraint, right? So this is like that very last stage of polish if you really want to do some refinement on that that transition, or like those keyframes. Like literally, this would be one of the very last steps you would do. You know, and recognize that I would save before you did it, because this is not undoable. Like this is not something you can like be like, never mind, I want to go back to when it was rigged. So that is something you can do, but not crucial. Like you could also just continue to work with it while it was constrained, and really it just means that it just needs to look good no matter how it's set up, right? That last phase just needs to look like those transitions are happening correctly. And so that may mean instead of baking this, you just have some keys that are sort of in betweening, and you're just manually moving it every frame. Like there's a 100 different solutions to how you could do this. Just recognize that rigging system doesn't have to be permanent. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any more questions, and this is a YouTube video, so I think I'm supposed to say like and subscribe or something. So if you wanna, bye.